This is Francis Ferrugia welcoming you to tonight's WM Daily News. Thank you for joining us. On Tuesday, police bulldozed a notorious immigrant squatter camp near Calais, detaining hundreds who hoped to slip across the English Channel into Britain. France's Immigration Minister Eric Besson, who visited the site, known as the Jungle, called it a base camp for human traffickers. He said he would return the rule of law to the northern French coast, adding, "The law of the jungle cannot last eternally." The people who camped here, mainly immigrants from Afghanistan, have strained relations between the UK and France and became a symbol of Europe's struggle with illegal immigration. A Sky News report continues that a total of 278 people, nearly half of them minors, were detained in the first part of the operation, said Pierre de Basque de Floran, a Pas-de-Calais region official. This operation is not targeting the immigrants themselves, it is targeting the logistics of the human traffickers who exploit them, he said. The migrants carried bags and blankets as they were led away by police. Activists opposing the clearance yelled at officers and some formed a human chain around the migrants. Other protesters briefly scuffled with riot police. Many detainees sobbed as they were loaded onto buses, saying they wanted to stay in the camp and voicing fears about being returned to Afghanistan. Mr. Besson said there was no violence in the operation and all personal belongings were collected and being sorted in the Calais mosque. 30 interpreters and a medical team helped authorities, and hundreds of temporary beds were arranged for those in custody. Bulldozers were later brought in to level the maze of makeshift tents built from sticks and sheets of plastic. Activist group Refugee Action called the police operation horrific and inhumane, but agreed the squalid camp should not have been permitted to sprout up in the first place. Mr. Besson said other smaller camps scattered around the region, sheltering Iraqi Kurds and illegal migrants from other trouble spots, would also be cleared out this week. The detainees were to be sent back to the countries where they entered the European Union. Reuters reports that China will find it hard to object to United States President Barack Obama's drive for a more balanced global economy at a G20 summit this week, but will resist any sweeping reforms that risk checking its headlong growth. The United States calls for exporting nations to consume more will shift the spotlight back toward China's managed currency regime and whooping trade surplus after a year in which these were put to one side, displaced by the imperative of recovering from the global financial crisis. That the United States is ready to put pressure on Beijing became clear this month, when, for the first time since China joined the World Trade Organization in 2001, it invoked a special safeguard clause to slap duties on Chinese-made tires. China, brimming with confidence as the world's largest growing economy, will extend a cooperative hand but will refuse to be pilloried as the main culprit. China will certainly want to understand more of what the United States is proposing before making any commitments, said Wang Yong, a professor of political economy at Peking University. China would want to ensure that there were no binding conditions and no chances of the document being used as a pretext for trade protectionism, Wang said. The United States proposal foresees analysis of G20 members' economic policies by the International Monetary Fund to determine whether they are consistent with better balanced growth. Chinese government researchers on Tuesday gave a cautious welcome to the United States initiative, but recent history shows that China will not let the IMF cut close to the bone. Both Beijing and Washington also grasped that any wider feuding between them could tarnish hopes for global economic revival, and Hu and Obama will want to keep trade and currency complaints from taking center stage at the G20 meeting. Neither side likes the other's political system, but they have to cooperate. They have their disputes but also need each other, said Sun Zhe, director of the Center for U.S.-China Relations at Tsinghua University in Beijing. China may be in a relatively conciliatory mood in Pittsburgh. First, it has been pressing to increase developing countries' voting rights at the IMF and needs US and European support for this. Second, it has been trying to shift its own economy away from export-driven growth after the financial crisis illustrated the perils of relying on external demand. The world has seen other close yet contentious trade relationships before. Observers point to parallels between China now and Japan during the 1980s, when Tokyo also quarreled with Washington over trade imbalances and exchange rate policies. With Beijing and Washington, however, trade friction is overlaid with political, ideological and security rifts. The United States trade deficit with China totaled $123 billion in the first 7 months of 2009, accounting for nearly 60% of the overall American trade deficit. Many US critics say this reflects the Communist Party's pervasive grip on the economy and lax labor and quality standards. In turn, Beijing sees many US policies as aimed at containing China's growing might, and it regularly accuses Washington of clinging to a Cold War mentality. But recent cases suggest both sides have scant appetite to dramatically escalate spats, said Gregory Chin of York University in Toronto, who studies Chinese multilateral diplomacy. Few US consumers could do without the torrent of inexpensive Chinese-made goods in their shops. For its part, China has invested up to 70% of its $2.13 trillion of foreign exchange reserves, the world's biggest stockpile, in dollar-denominated assets, mainly US government debt. China's main strategy at the G20 may be to deflect Obama's ambitious agenda by pushing for more modest technical goals of enhancing cross-border financial regulation. China would like this to be focused on re-regulation, the core bread and butter issues, Chin said. I don't think they want to open up all this trade stuff in front of everyone else, because that could open up a focus on broader imbalances, and China doesn't want that. The former boyfriend and 2 doctors of the late Playboy model Anne Nicole Smith have been charged with illegally supplying her with controlled substances for years before she died in a Florida hotel in February 2007. Reuters reports that a pharmacist asked to provide powerful medications for Nicole Smith described a combination of drugs as a prescription for pharmaceutical suicide, according to court documents released on Tuesday. The Los Angeles pharmacist's account of the incident gives a glimpse into how Smith was treated before her death in 2007 at age 39. Smith's longtime boyfriend Howard K. Stern and Arasevich and Kapoor have pleaded not guilty to charges of conspiracy and illegally supplying the model with drugs.